The first time I put my grandmother's gold-rimmed teacup in the microwave, my mom went completely silent, and I stayed quiet even though something in me cracked. Because the cup did not just belong to my grandma, it belonged to my mom's pride. And I could not understand why a sip of reheated coffee felt like a crime. My name is Waverly. I am 26. I work as a claims adjuster, the kind of job where you learn how people talk when they want something from you. I was the last kid at home, the surprise baby who grew up watching my brother and sister leave like it was normal. They had prom photos on the fridge while I was still learning how to tie my shoes. By the time I graduated college, my parents had already lived a whole different version of parenting. The louder one, the busier one, the one where they still believed they could control outcomes. I asked if I could stay a little longer to save money. They agreed, but they made it sound like a contract. I paid my own bills and handed over $300 a month for food and utilities. It was fair. It was also the first time I realized my mom liked the feeling of me owing her something, even when I did not. When I finally found a tiny house I could afford, I felt like I could breathe again. It was one of those old railroad worker cottages, small rooms, low ceilings, and a backyard that looked like it wanted a vegetable garden. No basement, no real storage. The kind of place where you have to decide what matters, because you cannot hide clutter behind a closed door. My parents announced they were moving south right after my offer got accepted. They said they were done with cold winters. My brother and sister teased me about it, like my parents were trying to make sure I could never move back. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But I noticed how quickly my mom started sorting through cabinets and closets, like she was racing the idea of me needing her again. That is when I asked about the china cabinet. It had always sat in our dining room like a museum display. Glass doors, soft lighting, plates with delicate patterns that made my mom stand a little straighter whenever guests came over. She would dust it with slow, careful movements, as if the dishes inside could hear her respect. I said casually, like it did not matter, that I wanted to take the china and silverware with me. I reminded her that she had always called it mine someday, like an inheritance you could touch with your eyes. I asked if she could put it in storage with their things until I was fully moved in. My mom's smile did not change, but her eyes did. She said they were not getting storage. She said they were getting rid of anything they did not use. Then she added too quickly that I could figure it out. It should not have stung. It was just dishes. But the way she said it made it feel like she was refusing something bigger, like she was refusing to acknowledge that I was leaving and not coming back. I asked if she could keep it at their new place just for a while. She said no again, a neat little no wrapped in a tone that dared me to argue, so I did not. I swallowed it, nodded, and told her it was fine. I could handle it. That night I lay awake listening to the house settle, and I could not stop thinking about how many times my mom had used the word heirloom, how she had told me those plates were meant to last generations, yet she was suddenly comfortable throwing them to the curb if it meant not being inconvenienced by me. Two friends helped me move everything to my new place. The cabinet barely fit. We had to turn it sideways, lift it like a puzzle, and slide it through my narrow hallway while I kept whispering, "Careful, careful," like the wood could hear fear. When it finally stood against my living room wall, it looked ridiculous and beautiful, like a piece of another life dropped into my tiny home. I promised myself I would make it worth it. I promised myself I would stop living like a kid waiting for permission. A few weeks later, I threw a housewarming. Not fancy, just people I loved, a cheap tablecloth, and music playing from my phone. I owned exactly 4 plates from a discount store. 1 pot, 1 pan, a cutting board that still smelled like the factory. I had friends coming, and I could already hear my mother's voice in my head saying I should have planned better. So I opened the china cabinet. I pulled out a serving platter with little painted flowers around the edge. I lifted a stack of dinner plates that looked too pretty for pizza. I set out the teacups even though we were not having tea. I used the silverware with the ornate handles because it was there, because it was mine, because I wanted one night where my life felt like it belonged to an adult who had her own home. Everyone treated it normally. They ate, laughed, and complimented the food like they would have if I had served it on paper plates. No one dropped anything. No one acted scared of the dishes. At the end of the night, I stood in my little kitchen, looking at the messy counter, and I realized something quietly shocking. I liked using them. The plates did not make me anxious. They made me feel grounded, like I had roots, even if my family always acted like love had to be earned with perfect behavior. After that, I started using the china whenever I wanted, sometimes for guests, sometimes just for me, especially on the nights when I came home exhausted and did not want to eat over the sink from a takeout container. I would pull out a real plate, and suddenly dinner felt like a choice instead of survival. It became my small rebellion, silent, private, satisfying. Then my parents called one evening, video chat. My mom's face filled the screen, hair perfectly styled, lipstick on, sitting in their new sunlit living room like she was already a different person. My dad waved from behind her, cheerful and distant the way he gets when he does not want to get involved. I was sitting at my tiny table eating leftovers, using one of the patterned plates and the fancy fork. I did not even think about it. I was just hungry. My mom's eyes locked on what I was holding. Her expression froze, like someone had hit pause. "What are you eating on?" she asked. I lifted the plate a little confused. "Dinner," I said. "Chicken and rice?" "No," she said, her voice thin. "The plate, the fork." I looked down and felt a flicker of embarrassment, even though I had done nothing wrong. It was amazing how quickly my body responded to her tone, like I was trained. I told her it was the china. I told her I used it sometimes. "Sometimes," she repeated, and the word sounded like a warning. I shrugged. I said I used it when I felt like it. They were mine. I moved them. I washed them. I stored them. I did not say the part where I had begged her for help, and she had refused. My mom leaned closer to the camera, eyes sharp. "Those are special occasion dishes," she said. "Those are not everyday dishes." I laughed, expecting it to soften her, but it did not. She said those were meant to be cherished and protected for generations. She said I was treating them like they were nothing nothing. She said my grandmother would be heartbroken. My throat tightened, not because she mentioned my grandmother, but because she used my grandmother's name like a weapon, like love was something I could lose if I did not obey. I wanted to argue. I wanted to list all the things I had done right. I wanted to remind her she refused storage, refused to help, refused to treat me like I mattered until she could control how I used the things she once promised me. But I did not do any of that. I just said calmly, "They are my dishes, Mom. I will use them how I want." To silence on the call was worse than yelling. My dad looked down at his hands like he suddenly found them interesting. My mom's mouth opened slightly, like she could not believe I had spoken. Then she hung up. I stared at my phone for a second, still holding the fork. My hands shook a little. I hated that. I hated that even now, in my own house. She could make me feel like a little girl again. A few minutes later, my brother called. Then my sister. Both of them sounded tired, like they had been dragged into a drama they did not ask for. They admitted Mom told them to call me. They told me gently to do whatever I wanted. They said they did not even like fancy china. They said Mom had forced it onto their wedding registries like it was a family rule. I laughed, but it was not fully funny. It was the kind of laugh you do when you realize you were not crazy. You were just alone. After I hung up, I sat in the dark and stared at the china cabinet. The glass reflected my face back at me. I could see my own eyes. I looked older than I felt. And then I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. A small sticker on the underside of one plate, half peeled, like it had been hidden but not fully removed. I flipped the plate over and my stomach dropped. It was not my grandmother's handwriting. It was a printed price label, faded but readable. I stood up too fast, heart pounding, and started checking the bottoms of the other pieces. One by one, fingers trembling as I turned them over. More stickers, different colors, different prices. And tucked behind the bottom drawer of the cabinet, where the silverware tray slid in, I found an old envelope. My name was not on it. My mother's name was. Inside were receipts, estate sale receipts. My chest went cold in a way that had nothing to do with dishes, because suddenly the question was not why she cared so much about me using the china, but what she was really protecting and what she had been lying about for years. Hold on, tiny real life pause. If you are listening right now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me your city, state, or country, and your first name. All right, now let me take you back. I sat on my kitchen floor with those receipts spread out like evidence, and I realized I had been fighting over an heirloom that might not even be an heirloom, and my mother had been acting like I was destroying family history while she hid the truth in plain sight. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my mom popped up, sweet as syrup. Do not touch the cabinet. We will talk tomorrow. My fingers hovered over the screen for a long second. My mom's text sat there like a commandment, like she still owned the air in my house. I did not answer. Instead, I set my phone face down on the table and took one slow breath, then another. My heart was loud in my ears, but my hands stopped shaking. If my mom wanted control, she was going to have to earn it without my panic. I gathered the receipts and slid them into a plain manila folder I used for work. The folder felt right, professional, calm, like I was handling a claim, not my childhood. Then I did something that surprised even me. I put the fancy plate back in the cabinet, gently, like I was taking care of it, not because she told me to, but because I wanted everything to be exactly how I left it. I wiped the glass doors with a paper towel. I made the cabinet look untouched. After that, I turned on the little lamp above my sink, opened my laptop, and started moving quietly. At my job, people lie to you with the confidence of someone who thinks you will be too embarrassed to check. They say their basement flooded. They say the ring was stolen. They say they never got the letter. And the trick is always the same. You do not accuse first. You verify first. So I verified. I typed the estate sale company name from the receipt into my browser. A simple website popped up, full of cheerful photos and pastel banners. It looked harmless, like a hobby, but the address on the receipt was local, Midwest local. It was from years ago. I stared at the date on the paper again, and my stomach tightened. It was the year my grandmother died. The year my mom cried the loudest at the funeral. The year she told everyone Grandma left her the china because she was the only one who truly appreciated it. I kept breathing. I found a contact email on the website and wrote a polite message. I did not mention my mom. I did not mention heirlooms. I just said I was trying to verify a purchase for insurance documentation and asked if they kept transaction records. My finger hovered over send. Then I heard my mom's voice in my head, sharp and sweet, saying Waverly, you always take things too seriously. I hit send anyway. My phone buzzed again. Another text from her. Please do not make this a thing. That one made my jaw clench because it confirmed what I already knew. She did not say, honey, I can explain. She did not say you might be misunderstanding. She said, do not make it a thing, meaning she knew it was already a thing. She just wanted me to pretend it was not. I almost replied. I almost wrote something defensive, something emotional, something she could screenshot and show my siblings as proof that I was unstable. Instead, I typed one word. Okay. Then I put my phone down again and I smiled without humor. That one word was my favorite kind of weapon. It made people careless. The next morning I woke up early, not because I was rested, but because my brain would not let me sleep. I made coffee, not in the teacup, but in a plain mug, and I sat at my little table watching sunlight slide across my floor like nothing in the world had changed. Around mid-morning, my brother Rhodes called. He did not say hello. He said, Mom is upset. I let silence stretch just long enough for him to hear himself. Rhodes sighed. I could picture him rubbing his forehead the way he does when he is trying to be the calm one. He asked what happened. I told him softly that Mom saw me using the china, got angry, and then I found receipts. He went quiet. Then he said, receipts for what? I did not say Mom lied. I did not say she manipulated us. I said, I found estate sale receipts in the cabinet. I am just trying to understand what is true. Rhodes exhaled like the air got heavier. He asked me to send him a photo. I did. He did not respond for a long minute. Then he said something that made my chest sting. Mom told me those dishes were Grandma's pride. She told me Grandma wanted you to have them. I swallowed. I felt that old child feeling, the one where you want to believe believe something beautiful because the truth feels like you are betraying your own memories. Rhodes added, I do not care about the dishes, Waverly. I care about the lying part. I heard something in his voice then. Not anger. Disappointment. Like he had spent his whole life stepping around Mom's emotions and was finally tired. My sister Magnolia called after him. Her voice came in breathless like she had been pacing. She said, Mom called me crying. She said you were ruining a family heirloom. I stared out my window at my clothesline. It moved slightly in the wind, empty and patient. Magnolia said, are you okay? That question almost broke me because it was so rare that anyone asked me that before asking what I did wrong. I said yes. Then I said, I think Mom lied about where the china came from. Magnolia whispered, oh my God. Then she said quietly, like when she told everyone she paid for my wedding dress, but Dad admitted later he did. I blinked hard. I had not known that. Magnolia kept going. She said there were little things. Stories Mom told that sounded better than reality. Stories that made her the center of devotion and sacrifice. Magnolia said she never challenged it because it was easier to let Mom have her version of things. I could hear her swallowing like she was fighting tears. Then she said, Waverly, be careful. Mom gets scary when you take away her story. I thanked her. I kept my voice calm. When I hung up, my hands were cold. At noon, I got an email reply from the estate sale company. They said they did keep records. They said the purchase on that receipt was part of a larger lot from an estate auction. They even attached a digital invoice, and there it was in plain text. Like the world did not care about my mom's feelings at all. The china cabinet, the plates, the silver set, all purchased together, listed as mid-century reproduction. Decorative value, not family heirloom, not passed down, not protected for generations. Decorative value. I stared at that phrase until it blurred. I should have felt relieved. Like, fine, use the plates. They are not sacred. But that was not what hurt. What hurt was realizing my mom had built a whole moral system around something she bought at a sale. A system where I was ungrateful if I did not treat her myth with reverence. My phone buzzed again. I am coming by this afternoon, my mom texted. Do not embarrass me. There it was again. Her fear was not that I was hurt. It was that I would embarrass her. I wrote back one word again. Okay. Then I opened the notes app on my phone and typed a plan. Simple and clean. 1. Take photos of everything. Receipts, invoice, stickers, cabinet. 2. Record the conversation. If legal in my state. 3. Do not accuse. Ask one small question. Let her reveal herself. I checked my state's rule on recording. One-party consent. I felt my stomach flip, but I also felt strangely steady. At work, we document. We document because memories change. Voices change. People deny. Paper does not. So I set my phone to record and slid it into a bowl on the counter. Angled toward the living room, I tested it with my own voice. It picked up sound clearly. Then I did something else. Another silent move. I pulled out one of the fancy plates, the one my mom recognized, and I made myself lunch on it. A sandwich, neatly cut. I ate slowly, right at my table, in full view of the cabinet. If she wanted to see me as disrespectful, she would, no matter what plate I used, so I might as well stop shrinking. The doorbell rang in the late afternoon. My chest tightened, but my face stayed calm. When I opened the door, my mom stood there with her purse clutched against her side and her smile already in place. My dad was behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes tired. My mom stepped inside like she owned the floor. She looked around, not at my house, but at the evidence of my independence, the little table, the simple couch, the cabinet. Her gaze snapped to the plate in my hand. She inhaled sharply, and for a second her mask slipped. Then she turned to me, voice low and controlled, and said, put that away, right now. I set the plate down gently, like I was setting down a truth she could not smash with volume. I looked her in the eyes and asked softly, one question, Mom, just one. She blinked, suspicious, already preparing her anger. I said, can you tell me where the china actually came from? The silence that followed was so thick I could hear the refrigerator hum. My mom's mouth opened, and in that tiny pause I saw it. The calculation, the choice between telling the truth and defending the story she loved more than me. Then she smiled again, too bright, too quick, and said, do not start this. Your grandmother would be ashamed. My dad's head lifted at that. His eyes met mine for the first time since they walked in, and I saw something there I had never seen before. Guilt. My dad did not say anything, but his shoulders sagged a fraction, like he had been holding up my mom's version of reality for years, and it was finally too heavy. I kept my voice gentle, not weak, gentle, the way you talk to someone who is about to run straight into their own lie. I said, I am not starting anything. I am asking because I found paperwork in the cabinet. My mom's eyes narrowed. Paperwork, she repeated, like the word itself offended her. She walked closer to the china cabinet and touched the glass door with the tips of her fingers, almost possessive. Then she looked at me and said, you went through it. I did not correct her. I did not explain. I did not apologize. I just nodded once, slow, calm, and said, I live here. I moved it. I clean it. I can open my own cabinet. My mom's lips pressed together. She glanced at my dad, silently demanding backup. He stayed quiet. That made her turn back to me with a brighter smile, the kind she uses when she wants to look reasonable while she punishes you. She said, Waverly, honey, you have always been dramatic. You found some old receipt and now you are trying to rewrite family history. Rewrite. Like I was the one who made stories. I walked to my kitchen counter and picked up the manila folder. I did not slam it down. I did not wave it. I carried it like it was normal. Like this conversation was about taxes. I opened it and slid out the printed invoice from the estate sale company. I placed it on the table between us. My mom did not look at it at first. She stared at my face, trying to intimidate me into moving it away. I said, please read it. My dad took a step closer. He looked at the paper. His eyes moved across the lines. I watched his expression tighten, then soften, like he already knew this was coming. My mom finally glanced glanced down. At first she looked confused, then her eyes sharpened, then she went very still. The room felt smaller, like my little house was holding its breath. She let out a laugh that did not sound like laughter. "That is not real," she said. My dad cleared his throat. "It looks real," he murmured. My mom snapped her head toward him so fast it was almost violent. "You stay out of this." He flinched. That tiny flinch did something to me. It made my chest ache, not with pity, but with anger, because I suddenly saw the pattern in a new light. My mom did not just control me. She controlled the entire house with her moods, and everyone learned to move around her like furniture. I kept my eyes on my mom. I said, "The receipt was in the cabinet. The stickers are on the plates. The company confirmed the transaction. They sent the invoice. This is not an argument. It is just information." My mom's face changed again, the smile collapsing into something cold. She said, "So what, Waverly? So what if I bought it? That does not give you permission to treat it like trash." There it was, the pivot. The way she skipped right over the lie and grabbed the moral ground anyway. I felt my throat tighten, but I forced my voice to stay even. I said, "I never treated it like trash. I used it, I washed it, I kept it safe. The only person who turned it into a sacred object was you." My mom's eyes flashed. She opened her mouth, then shut it. She looked around my house again, like she was searching for something she could criticize to get her power back. She pointed at my small table. "You live like this," she said, like it was an accusation, like you are struggling and proud of it. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, "I live like this because it is mine." My mom leaned in and lowered her voice, the way she used to when she wanted to scare me without witnesses. She said, "Do you know what it looks like when you tell people I lied about Grandma? It makes me look like a bad daughter." The words hit, and suddenly the whole thing made sense. Not the china, not the plates, the story. She did not want heirlooms. She wanted proof of her devotion. She wanted a symbol she could display. Something that said, "I was loved the most, I was trusted the most, I deserved the most." And she wanted me to protect that symbol, even if it meant lying for her. My hands were steady now. I surprised myself with how steady. I said, "You are not upset because I used the plates. You are upset because I did not play my role." My mom's expression hardened. "What role?" I looked at her and spoke carefully, like each word was a step on ice. I said, "The role where I stay grateful and quiet, so you can keep telling whatever story makes you feel important." My mom's cheeks reddened. She looked at my dad again, waiting for him to cut me down. He did not. He stared at the invoice, then at the cabinet, then at my face. His voice was soft, almost ashamed. He said, "Honey, stop. Just stop. She is not wrong for asking." My mom's head snapped toward him. "How dare you?" My dad's shoulders lifted with a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He looked at me and then at my mom, and his voice got a little stronger. He said, "We bought it after your mother's mom passed. She wanted something to put in the dining room because the real china got chipped over the years." She cried about it. She said it made her feel like a failure. So I found that set at a sale and I surprised her with it. My mom's eyes widened, furious. "Do not tell her that." My dad continued anyway, quietly, like he was choosing peace over fear. He said, "You told the kids it was Grandma's because you liked the idea. It made you feel close to her. I did not think it would become this big thing. But you cannot punish Waverly for using her own dishes." My mom stared at him, breathing fast. For a second I thought she might cry. Then her face went smooth, like a mask snapping back into place. She turned to me and said, "You see what you did? You came between your father and me. You always do this. You take things and you make them ugly." I felt a familiar tug in my chest, that old instinct to defend myself, to prove I was not the bad one. But I did not. Instead I said, "No, you made it ugly when you used Grandma's name to control me." My mom stepped closer. Her voice rose. I did not raise mine. I stayed calm and I watched her get louder, because loudness was her weapon and calmness was mine. She said, "You are ungrateful. You think you are so grown up. You live in this little house like it is some grand achievement, and you want to disrespect everything we gave you." I nodded once, like I was listening to a customer explain why their story kept changing. I said, "You refused to store the cabinet. You refused to help. You tried to throw it away. Then you got angry that I used it. That is not love. That is control." My mom's breathing hitched. She looked around again like she needed an audience to win. My dad said her name, quiet and warning, but she ignored him. She reached for the invoice on the table as if she could snatch it and erase it. I slid my hand over it first. Not aggressive, just firm. I said, "I already sent a copy to Rhodes and Magnolia." My mom froze. The air changed. It was immediate. Her eyes went wide, then sharp, then glossy with rage. "You what?" I did not smile. I did not gloat. I kept my voice level. I said, "I did not accuse you. I just shared the documents. I told them I wanted clarity. That is all." My mom's mouth opened, then closed. I watched her realize she could not spin it now. She could not call me dramatic if there was paper. She could not call me a liar if she had built the lie. Her voice turned soft suddenly, sweet, the way it does when she is switching tactics. "Waverly, honey," she said, "you did not have to do that. This was private. Families keep things private." I looked at her and felt something settle in me, heavy and final. I said, "Families also tell the truth to each other." My dad exhaled. He looked relieved and heartbroken at the same time. My mom's eyes darted to the cabinet again, and then she did something I did not expect. She walked up to it and opened the door. Her hands moved too fast, not careful like before. She pulled a plate out like she was proving a point and held it in the air. "Fine," she snapped. "If you want to treat it like nothing, then it is nothing." My stomach dropped. I could see the plate trembling in her grip. My dad stepped forward. "Stop." I did not move toward her. I did not grab. I did not beg. I did not give her the satisfaction of my panic. I said calmly, "If you break it, you will only prove that you never cared about the dishes. You only cared about being obeyed." My mom's arm stiffened. Her eyes locked on mine. For a long second, I saw the war inside her, the urge to destroy versus the fear of looking like the villain. Then she lowered the plate slowly. Her face twisted and she whispered, "You are just like your grandmother." The words were meant to sting. They did not. They landed in a different place, because behind my anger, behind my hurt, I felt something almost warm. My grandmother had been the only person in our family who ever looked at me like I was already whole. I nodded nodded once. I said, thank you. My mom blinked, thrown off. I reached into the cabinet and pulled out the plate from her hand. I set it back on the shelf carefully. Then I closed the door. I turned to her and said, you are welcome to visit when you can treat me like an adult in my own home. Until then, I think it is best we take a break. My mom stared at me like she did not recognize me, like she was waiting for the little girl to re-describe herself and apologize. My dad looked at me with something that felt like pride. It made my eyes sting, and I hated that it took this moment to get it. My mom grabbed her purse. She did not hug me. She did not say goodbye. She walked out first, shoulders stiff, like she was marching away from an insult. My dad lingered at the door. He looked tired. He said, I am sorry. I did not rush to comfort him. I did not tell him it was okay. I said, I know. Then he left. When the door shut, I stood in my quiet house and listened to the silence. Not the tense silence my mom used as punishment. A clean silence. I walked to the cabinet and opened the bottom drawer where I had found the envelope before. Something told me to look again, like my hands remembered there was more. Behind the wooden divider, tucked under the velvet lining, was a thin folded paper I had not seen. It was not a receipt. It was not printed. It was a note in shaky handwriting. My grandmother's handwriting? My breath caught as I read it. It was short. It said she had kept one thing for me in that cabinet, something small that my mother did not know about, because she wanted me to have something that was only mine. I reached deeper, fingers brushing the back corner, and I pulled out a tiny velvet pouch. Inside was a simple gold ring, worn smooth, with my grandmother's initials etched inside the band. I stood there shaking, not from fear this time, but from a grief that felt like love. My mom could keep her story about plates. My grandmother left me the truth.